A thank you to the channel supporters. More on this at the end of the video. Hello everybody and welcome back to a brand new upload. Now today I wanted to dive into a bit of a theory crafting video, as this is something that I do quite a bit in my spare time. I'm a big fan of the process of theory crafting, and I haven't had the opportunity to make a video about it in the past. So this suggestion comes from my good friend Easternlands, and he wanted to know if I had access to the Tombs of Amascut, where would the items be useful? And I myself am interested in this as well. And this video will serve as a reminder to you all that Inquisitor cannot access Tombs of Amascut. Remember, I cannot train any skills as per the account restrictions, and in order to access the Tombs of Amascut, you must complete the whole questline all the way up to Beneath Cursed Sands. And by completing this whole quest line or series of quests, I will unlock an additional 6 skills, which I will, of course, list on the screen for you all. And why? Because that'll probably be very useful. So today I'm only going to be looking at bosses that I will actually do on Inquisitor. So for example, I'm not going to be looking at wilderness bosses, as I don't plan on doing them. And last but not least, before we dive into what Inquisitor could profit from the Tombs of Amascut, I want to affirm that I don't want the requirements of the tombs changed for my account. The way Jagex made the third raid was to attach it to a questline, and that is completely okay by me. And last but not least, while looking at the Tombs of Amascut here, I wanted to look at it through a lens, like we're in another timeline, a timeline where a quest requirement and skills are not required to access it, while keeping the idea of the raid fully intact. So to begin with here, we are going to look at the mechanics of the raid in particular. And there are 3 instances where I can obtain token experience, which I would want to avoid at all costs. Along the Het path, on your way to Akka, there is a seal which you have to mine in order to complete the room. This gives token mining experience. I would not be able to mine this seal. This would make Inquisitor ineligible to participate in the main point of the room. However, I could participate in other ways, like placing down the light mirrors to direct the light. On the path of Scabarus, on your way to fighting Kefri, there are agility obstacles, which you can use to cross to the other side. These are very simple to avoid, I just wouldn't make use of them to cross over during the puzzle room. And last but not least, in the path of Atmaken, there are pillars, or support pillars, which need to be repaired, and these give construction experience. So in this hypothetical timeline, I would at least need a duo partner to do Tombs of Amascut with. And off the top of my head, those are all 3 of the instances where you can gain token experience. If I missed one, please let me know below. Now to start, we'll look at the common rewards table, and above all else, the cache of runes, as well as the soul runes, and maybe even the coins and death runes would be beneficial for Inquisitor. Everything else would be a drop to the main account, as I either cannot craft, farm, or use herb lore to make the potions with the secondaries provided from this raid. The cache of runes would be fantastic, as I would be eligible to receive up to 3,600 blood runes, which would be absolutely god tier for charging my Sanguinesti staff. And if I did get the max roll of 3,600 blood runes from a cache of runes, that would equate to 1,200 charges. Based on the price from the Arceus General Store, this would save me up to 2.3 million gold pieces, which is absolutely insane. And of course, you all may or may not know, I keep a soul rune stack of up to 16,000 soul runes. Everything else would be dropped off. And more recently, I've decided to start selling death runes off of my account while maintaining my trident being fully charged. So moving into the tertiary rewards, the thread of Elidinis will allow you to upgrade your rune pouch in order to store an additional rune stack. Of course, this would be massively beneficial for my account. It essentially just gives you an extra inventory slot, which would be extremely nice for storing runes. For example, if I wanted to get Bones to Peaches for the Chambers of Zarek, I could get Mud Runes from the Undead Druids in the Forthos dungeon, and throw my Nature Runes in there as well, and I would be able to save some Sanguinesti charges and pick up the bones from the scavengers. So up next, I want to look at the jewels which can be obtained from the raid. The Eye of the Corruptor, the Jewel of the Sun, and the Breach of the Scarab. Now, seeing as how the Karis Partisan is obtained from completing the questline in order to access the Tombs of Amascut, based on the logic we are going off of, we are simply saying, hey, what if I could access the Tombs of Amascut without completing the questline? So based on that logic, these jewels would not be beneficial to my account whatsoever. And of course, as you all may or may not know, depending on if you've seen my Inquisitor series, pets are a bit of a detriment to the account, as I do not have a menagerie to store them, since my construction level is 1. And last but not least, we can address the elite clue scrolls which can roll from this raid. Now, who knows? I don't know if anyone's tested this or not. Now, in the first 2 raids, you can actually stack 2 Elite Clue Scrolls in your inventory. So assuming the Tombs of Amascut chests work the same way as the first 2 raid chests, I'm assuming it sort of works like the Tob chests since you have a bank all or a loot to inventory option. I'm assuming that your loot rolls when you open your chest. Now, as to if the Tombs of Amascut would be the meta for doing such a method, is undecided, as the Wikipedia does not know the drop rates at the moment. Another raid could drop them at a better rate. Now, I'm just going to discuss 2 of the unique items to begin with here, the Lightbearer and the Elidinis Ward. I'm not sure as to if the Lightbearer would be beneficial to me on Inquisitor, as I feel like I really need to capitalize on the magical accuracy of the Brimstone Ring, and the extra max hits given to me by my Berserker Ring imbued. Though, if you think that I could make use of the Lightbearer on Inquisitor anywhere, be sure to let me know down below, because I would be open to hearing what you think. And of course, following the Lightbearer, we have the Elidinis Ward, which, of course, Inquisitor cannot use because I do not have 80 defense. I am restricted at 30 defense for the Inquisitor's armor set. Hence the name Inquisitor. Now, a little rundown on how the DPS calculator works, and of course you can find a copy of this in the description down below. You can go to File, Make Copy, and then you can use this sheet for yourself. So in the top left, you can put in your RuneScape name and it will load up your statistics. Now, of course, I am 30 defense, but it doesn't seem to detect that. It has something to do with the high scores, I believe. In this slot, you put the relevant potions that you will be making use of, and then you put in the prayers that you will be using. In my case, I don't have access to piety or chivalry, so 15% will have to do. And then we have set 1 and set 2 here, which is where you insert the gear that you will be using. And up top, this is where you choose the boss that you will be pursuing. Once you have everything set up, if you land a Dragon Warhammer spec or a number of BGS damage, you can put that in here. And you can swap to show damage per second average or a various amount of other things which you may want to see. But the main part I want you all to look at for this video is this column right here, where it shows the difference in a DPS comparing set 1 and set 2. Now, I'm going to leave the weapons to last, so let's take a look at the Masori mask, body, and chaps. Now, this would be a best in slot ranging armor set for Inquisitor, as the base level of Masori requires 30 defense and 80 range to equip. So, comparing my previous setup, or what I believe to remember to be my previous setup, the items that would be upgraded would be the Robin Hood hat, the Shazian body, and my God D'hide chaps, and those of course would be converted to the Masori items. Now, if we compare my old set to the new set of Masori armor that I could hypothetically receive in this alternate timeline, you can see that I would do 17% more damage per second with the magic shortbow and rune arrows. That's a pretty big step up in my opinion. But if we were to get a ranging potion drop, then the Masori armor set would be around 14 to 15% better instead. At the Theater of Blood, I would most likely only bring an additional Masori armor piece to swap with my magic shortbow. So up next, we will enter the Chambers of Xeric. And in the Skeletal Mystics room, you can see that I would have a 42.73 DPS increase when fighting Skeletal Mystics. Now, what if we happen to have an overload in that raid? Well, it would be 40.29% better. On the small Mutadial, the Masori armor set would give me a 16% DPS increase. And with an overload, it would give me an almost 13% boost. On the big Mutadial, the Masori armor set would give me a 21% DPS increase, and nearly a 17% DPS increase if we had an overload. Now, if we happen to send a Vasa not hitting a Dragon Warhammer, it would be a 35% DPS increase. And with an overload, a 25% DPS increase. On the Magic Vanguard, it is a 28% DPS increase. And with an overload, a 21% DPS increase. Against Lizardman Shamans, Masori armor would provide a 16% DPS increase. And with an overload, nearly a 13% DPS increase. Now, I never do the Great Olm's final phase without an overload dose or a twisted ranging dose, which is equivalent, and that would provide a 20% DPS increase. So therefore, we do not need to calculate without an overload for this one. Now, I did want to mention that I did not include Vespula in these calculations, as the Vespula portal is something that I do not attack with a bow. Up next, Skatizo. Now, this is a boss that would see quite a DPS increase if I got the Masori armor set, with a massive 42% DPS increase. A reminder, I cannot get Arclight, locked behind a quest chain. Well, the Darklight is. So if I missed a boss that you think I can access, then be sure to let me know down below, and perhaps I can get you some calculations. So up next, the Osmumten's Fang. Now this has been a hot topic in the community as of recent, but as of this moment, it has not seen any nerfs, and therefore we will calculate away. So moving back to the Alchemical Hydra, if we compare my ranging setup to what would be my melee setup with the Osmumten's Fang on aggressive stab, you would see a 53% DPS increase. Now, of course, I do want to mention that this is just the raw DPS numbers, and you actually have to move the boss in the Alchemical Hydra's lair over the vents, so a little bit of DPS would be lost while moving the boss. However, that damage would certainly be made up. Though if I did want a more accurate calculation, I would have to compare my Grazi Rapier and Full Inquisitors to the Osmumten's Fang with Full Inquisitors, as that would bring it down to a 15% DPS increase with the Osmumten's Fang, which is still sizable. Back when I was doing Alchemical Hydra on Inquisitor, I did not have the Grazi Rapier yet. Hence, I was using the Magic Shortbow imbued with rune arrows. Now moving over to the Chambers of Xeric again, on the Great Olm's melee hand, on paper it looks like the Osmumten's Fang is around 24% better, but because of the tick speed, I wouldn't be able to consistently do the 2-to-0 method that I normally do with the Grazi Rapier. So I'll provide this one to you all, but sort of leave it up in the air. So you all may or may not know, but for Tecton, I do the step back method with the Dragon Warhammer. And with the Fang, I would essentially do that very same method, so we can say with certainty that this is a comparable. The Osmumten's Fang would be an approximate 48% DPS increase over the Dragon Warhammer, which is absolutely insane. And if I just so happen to have an Elder Potion from Vanguards or an Overload from another boss room, it would be a 42% DPS increase at Tecton, which, wow, that's crazy. For the ranged Vanguard, the Fang is 33.5% better than the current setup of a Rapier. And generally, I don't have an Elder or Overload potion prior to doing Vanguards, so we won't calc this one with them. So on the glowing crystal in the Vasa room, you have to use a stab weapon to pierce the crystal and deal damage to it. In this instance, the Osmumten's Fang is only 0.3% better than the Rapier, but just look at that accuracy. It's almost 16% more accuracy with the Fang. Though, surprisingly enough, if you look at the overkill DPS in the bottom left of the DPS, it actually shows the rapier is very slightly faster in the expected seconds to kill. And if you throw an overload on top of that, the rapier becomes better than the Fang by almost 3.5%. So I've heard through the grapevine that people are using the Osmumten's Fang at the Nightmare, and I wanted to confirm that with my setup, using the Sarachnis Cudgel with Zamorakian Brood dose is still better by nearly 7%. Though if I wanted to take a trip back to Sarachnis, the Osmumten's Fang would be 2.4% more DPS than my Sarachnis Cudgel. And the damage percentage would only improve should I land a Dragon Warhammer special attack. Though, keep in mind, with a 4-tick weapon, sometimes you're able to get 3 hits per rotation on Sarachnis versus 2 hits with a 5-tick weapon, which the Osmumten's Fang certainly is. Now, looking at the Theater of Blood, I've done a few different calculations regarding the Osmumten's Fang versus the Grazi Rapier in my setup, but I'm going to show you the one that has 2 Dragon Warhammers landed, as the Grazi Rapier then becomes better. I don't think I ever do a Theater of Blood run where we have less than 2 Dragon Warhammers hit on the Maiden of Sigadinti. So in this instance, I do believe that the Grazi Rapier is better, if only by a little bit. For the Pestilent Bloat, the Osmumten's Fang is around 8.5% better, though I know in some raids we do have individuals who BGS special attack, which if we hit a 20 with BGS damage, the Osmumten's Fang then becomes 4.21% better than the Rapier. At the Nilicus Vasilius boss, the Grazi Rapier reigns supreme with a 7.4% DPS lead. And most of the people that I top with use DPS special attack weapons during this phase, though if any amount of special attack damage hits, which drains defense, well, the Rapier still reigns supreme. Ah yes, Sodaseg, the tankiest Theater of Blood boss, which we all know and love. Well, with 0 Dragon Warhammer special attacks hitting, the Fang is 44.3% better. If a singular Dragon Warhammer special attack hits, it is 28% better. And if 2 Dragon Warhammer special attacks hit, the Fang is around 15% better. Ah yes, gotta love that defense scaling. Now, I never really do a Zarpus room without seeing at least 2 Dragon Warhammers hit. That's not to mention BGS damage. However, in the instance that 2 Dragon Warhammers hit, the Osmumten's Fang is 2.5% better than the Rapier. And if only 1 Warhammer hits, then the Osmumten's Fang is 9.5% better than the Rapier. What it comes down to is the more defense reduction, the closer that they will get in damage per second. So when we're fighting Verzik and she's on her throne, generally it's 2 melee hits, and then we run back to the pillar into another staff and repeat. And feel free to correct my calculation in the comments down below, but apparently the Osmumten's Fang is 318.93% better than the Rapier during P1 of Verzik. Oh, okay. Yes, that's very accurate. I see. I think something's wrong with that. Maybe in the DPS calculator, the Osmumten's Fang doesn't take into account the damage reduction from non-Dawnbringer damage? Who knows, but I'm going to throw it into the video because that's a really funny metric to look at. During Phase 2 of the Verzik fight is where I swap to my Abyssal Whip, and in this instance I would have to set the Osmumten's Fang to Slash, and it would provide me with a 36% DPS increase over the normal Abyssal Whip. Now, I'm unsure as to if this takes into account the extra tick that I miss by doing the step back method at Verzik P2. You know, the Fang's 5-tick and the Whip is 4-tick. You're essentially doing the Scythe Walk. Man, I'm probably getting all my terminology wrong. It's been so long since I've done Tob at this point. But yes, 36% DPS increase with the Fang, raw DPS. And last but not least, the final phase of Verzik, which sees me still using the Abyssal Whip, and in this instance, the Osmumten's Fang on Slash we'll see nearly a 20% DPS increase. And last but not least, I wanted to take a look at the thermonuclear smoke devil. Of course, I'd be using the step under method. Comparing the Grazi Rapier to the Osmumten's Fang, you would see a 33% DPS increase using the Fang. As a reminder, we cannot wear anything on our head because we would be wearing a face mask in this instance. And if I happen to land a Dragon Warhammer on the Thermonuclear Smoke Devil, it would drop to a 20.66 DPS increase using the Fang over the Rapier. And last but not least, we will take a look at the Tumaken Shadow. Looking forward at Barrows, however, against Darok, we see a 20% DPS increase with the Tumaken Shadow over the Trident of the Seas. And of course, I won't be calculating my Sanguinesti staff, as that is not something I'd realistically use at Barrows. At least the Tumaken Shadow is more affordable than my Sanguinesti staff. As a reminder, I can only buy soul runes from the Arceus General Store from Raygath. Well, you see, blood runes from Raygath wares sell for an average of around 658 coins per blood rune. As for the soul runes, they sell for an average of 493.5. To look at the total calculations, each cast of a Sanguinesti staff costs Inquisitor 1,974 coins, while each cast of a Tumaken's Shadow would cost around 1,462 coins. And of course, this isn't even taking into account how easy it is to come across Chaos runes on the account, so I imagine a majority of the time, I probably wouldn't even have to buy Chaos runes, at least at the start. And of course, looking at Carol, it would be a 25% DPS increase to use the Tumaken's Shadow. And if I really wanted to get fancy, I could bring my Infinity top and bottoms as a switch, and I'd get up to 27% more DPS. And a cool thing I wanted to note, against Aram, the Grazi Rapier would be better if I did not bring the Infinity swap. And if I brought the Infinity swap, the Tumaken's Shadow would become 20% better than the Grazi Rapier against Aram, which, that sort of blows my mind. Just goes to show how good that scaling on the Tumaken's Shadow is, huh? At Ice Demon, the Mystic Smokestaff with Fire Wave would reign supreme over the Shadow by 38%. Fire damage OP. Comparing my range setup to the Tumaken's Shadow at Lizardman Shamans, according to what I would have access to, the Tumaken's Shadow would be a 41% DPS increase. Though, keep in mind, I still would not be able to safe spot the Shamans, as the Magic Shortbow has a range of 7 tiles and the Tumaken's Shadow has a range of 8 tiles. I believe the requirement to safe spot Shamans is 9 tiles. Now, as a reminder, I am 30 defense locked and therefore cannot use the long range attack style, as I will gain defensive XP. And if we happen to have overloads or the relevant combat boosting potions, it would be 34% better than the range setup. At Small Muttadial, the Tumaken's Shadow would be 65% better than my range setup. And if we happen to have overloads or combat boosting potions, it would be at nearly 53% better. And looking at the big Muttadial without any combat potions, the Shadow would be 25% better than the range setup. And with overloads, it would be 22% better than the range setup. At the Skeletal Mystics, the Tumaken's Shadow is 192% better than my range setup. Oh, my mind is sort of blown here. This weapon's so powerful, man. Hell, at that rate, I'd want to bring in more mage swaps just to make it better. And with overloads, the Tumaken's Shadow is 151% better. So if my team were feeling charitable, I could achieve up to 255% DPS increase by using the Tumaken's Shadow at Tecton. Now, of course, this does not include if Dragon Warhammers hit, or if I have any combat boosting potions, but using the Tumaken's Shadow at Tecton would be extremely chill. That's pretty broken. And if we had overloads, it would be 197% DPS increase with the Tumaken's Shadow. On the Melee Vanguard, the Tumaken's Shadow is 30.8% better than my Sanguinesti staff. And of course, I did want to calculate this with all of my gear on, as realistically, I don't believe that I unequip things at Vanguards, though if I did, that DPS gap would grow. And on the Magic Vanguard, the Tumaken's Shadow is 62% better than my range setup. So yes, I would use the Tumaken's Shadow on the Magic Vanguard, on which you should be using range. Thank God we have a saving grace here, as the Grozzy Rapier is nearly 60% better against the range Vanguard versus the Tumaken's Shadow. So if we wanted to step into hypothetical territory here and say that Inquisitor had a twisted bow, for example, and wanted to send the Abyssal Portal in the Vestibula room, the Tumaken's Shadow would be nearly 120% more DPS, though you'll have to let me know in the comments below if 8 tiles can reach the Abyssal Portal, otherwise I'd have to use the long-range style, which, of course, I can't do. So maybe this whole calculation is just incorrect, and I won't be needing it at all. As per usual, I never go into the Great Olm room without being overloaded, and therefore, comparing my Sanguinesti staff setup to the Tumaken's Shadow, the Shadow is 16.5% more DPS, though I also would lose the healing ability of the Sanguinesti staff, which, honestly, at that rate, I may still bring it along, because healing at Ulm is very nice. Moving on to the Kraken, comparing the Trident of the Seas to the Tumaken's Shadow, the Shadow is 22.59% more damage per second than the Trident. And I also wanted to mention that the God Miter, the Combat Bracelet, are both standing in for the Mystic Hat, as well as the Mystic Gloves. Looking at the Nightmare Totems now, of course, comparing my Sanguinesti staff, which I currently use, to the Tumaken's Shadow, the Shadow would provide me with a 5% DPS increase. But again, that means I'd be losing the healing potential of the Sanguinesti. As a reminder, we do not need the accuracy at the totems in the Nightmare, as it does not contribute to increasing the DPS. And remember, all magic damage against the totems is doubled, hence being able to achieve these numbers. And of course, going back to that range setup versus mage setup at Skatizo, the Tumaken's Shadow is 95% better at Skatizo. Man, I'm sure that would speed up the kills, wouldn't it? And at the Nilicus Vasilius in the Theater of Blood, I would make use of the Tumaken's Shadow to achieve 20% more DPS over the Trident of the Seas. Though that, of course, is without bringing the Occult Necklace, which at the current moment I don't particularly bother with, but if I did get the Shadow, I would certainly start bringing the Occult, which would allow me to achieve 55% DPS over the Trident without the Occult. Now, I would calculate the Tumaken's Shadow at the Thermonuclear Smoke Devil, but I do not have the means to long-range the boss, and therefore I do not believe that magic would be greatly beneficial to me there. Though I guess I could capitalize on the Step Under method, but I think that's what I will leave you with today. Perhaps Inquisitor could have obtained these items with the account restrictions intact in another timeline. Damn, that was a long video, and hey, you're pretty cool for making it to the end. Just like these channel members on screen who get the videos 3 days early. Be sure to hit that join button below to join their ranks. And up next, the Buy Me a Coffee supporters, who, with a one-time tip, have supported the channel. Thank you. The link for that is in the description down below as well. So hey, be sure to let me know what you think of the theory crafting video down below. There was a lot of highly technical things in this video, which I know some people may not follow, but I hope you paused the video in some places and really considered the potential of what could have been. Anyways, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe down below. Toggle notifications on, as we will have new videos in the future. See you in the next one.